The morning sun cast long shadows across Haven's Edge as the Martinez family packed their camping gear into the old transport vehicle. Carlos Martinez checked the supplies one more time, while his wife Helen folded the last of their blankets. Their two children, 8-year-old Jake and 6-year-old Lucy, bounced around excitedly in the back seat. "Are we really going to see the big trees, Papa?" Lucy asked, pressing her small face against the window. Carlos smiled at his daughter. "Yes, little one, the tallest trees you've ever seen." Haven's Edge was a mining colony, but it had beautiful wilderness areas that stretched for thousands of miles beyond the settlements. The Martinez family had lived there for 3 years, and Carlos worked in the deep mines that pulled precious metals from the planet's core. Helen taught at the colony school. They had planned this camping trip for months, wanted to show their children the natural wonders of their new world. The drive to the camping spot took 2 hours through winding dirt roads. Massive trees towered above them, their purple leaves creating a canopy so thick it blocked most of the sunlight. Strange bird-like creatures called out from the branches, their songs unlike anything from Earth. "Look at how big they are." Jake pointed at the trees. He was always curious about everything, asking questions about every plant and animal they saw. Helen pulled out her camera to take pictures. "We'll make a photo album when we get back home." They set up camp in a small clearing beside a crystal-clear stream. The water bubbled over smooth rocks, and tiny fish swam in the shallow pools. Carlos pitched the tent while Helen unpacked the food supplies. The children immediately ran to the stream to watch the fish. "Stay close to the camp," Carlos called after them. "Don't go beyond those red flowers." The first day passed peacefully. They cooked their meals over a small fire, told stories, and played simple games. As night fell, the forest came alive with new sounds. Deep howls echoed in the distance, and Carlos knew those were the calls of thornbacks, the large predator animals that lived in the deep wilderness. "What's that noise, Papa?" Lucy asked, moving closer to her father. "Just animals talking to each other," Carlos said, putting his arm around her. "They won't bother us here." On the second morning, Jake woke up early. The sun was just starting to rise, and the forest was quiet except for the stream. He saw a small animal drinking water on the other side, something that looked like a rabbit but with longer legs and blue fur. Jake was fascinated. He had never seen this type of animal before. Without thinking, he quietly left the tent to get a closer look. The animal saw him and bounded away into the trees. Jake followed, wanted to see where it would go. Lucy woke up a few minutes later and saw Jake's empty sleeping bag. She looked outside and saw her brother walking into the forest. Not wanting to be left behind, she quickly put on her shoes and followed him. "Jake, wait for me," she whispered loudly, but he was too far away to hear. Carlos and Helen woke up an hour later to find both children gone. At first, they thought the kids were just playing by the stream, but when they couldn't find them anywhere near the camp, panic set in. "Jake! Lucy!" Helen called out, her voice echoing through the forest. Carlos grabbed his communication device and tried to call the colony, but they were too far from the main settlement for the signal to reach. He fired 3 shots into the air with his emergency flare gun, hoping someone might hear, but no response came. They searched the area around their camp for hours, calling the children's names until their voices were hoarse. The forest was vast and dangerous, with deep ravines, thick underbrush, and predators that could easily kill a child. By evening, Carlos made the difficult decision to leave Helen at the camp and hike back to get help. It took him 6 hours to reach the colony settlement, and he immediately contacted Ryan Burke, the head of colonial security. Ryan assembled a search team within an hour. 20 volunteers with tracking equipment, medical supplies, and weapons joined the search. They used small aircraft to scan the forest from above, while ground teams followed animal trails and stream beds. Dr. Patricia Wong, the colony's chief medical officer, came with the search team. "Children can survive longer than adults think," she told Helen, trying to offer hope. "They're smart kids and they know basic survival." The search continued for 3 weeks. Every day, teams went deeper into the wilderness, following any sign that might lead to children. They found Jake's torn jacket hanging on a bush 5 miles from the camp, and one of Lucy's shoes near a stream another 3 miles away. The forest was full of dangers. The thornbacks were the biggest threat. Large, powerful predators with thick hide and razor-sharp claws. They hunted in packs and were known to be highly intelligent. The search teams had several close encounters with these creatures, and 2 volunteers were injured in attacks. Other dangers included poisonous plants, deep pits hidden by fallen leaves, and unstable cliff edges. The weather was unpredictable, with sudden storms and temperature drops that could kill anyone caught without shelter. As the weeks passed, hope began to fade. Colonial Administrator Kate Phillips made the difficult decision to scale back the search. The teams had covered over 1,000 square miles of wilderness, and winter was approaching. The harsh weather would make further searching nearly impossible. "We've done everything humanly possible," Kate told Carlos and Helen during a meeting at colony headquarters. "I'm sorry, but we have to face the reality that they may not have survived." Carlos refused to give up. He continued searching on his own for another 2 weeks, but the vast wilderness seemed to have swallowed his children completely. Helen became sick from stress and lack of sleep, and Dr. Wong insisted she be treated at the medical center. Finally, after 2 months of searching, the colonial government officially declared Jake and Lucy Martinez as lost and presumed dead. A memorial service was held at the colony center, and their names were added to the monument that honored those who had died on Haven's Edge. The Martinez family was given compassionate leave to return to Earth. Carlos couldn't bear to continue working the mines, and Helen couldn't teach knowing her children had vanished somewhere in the wild forest outside the classroom windows. Before they left, they placed 2 small markers at the edge of the wilderness where the search had begun. The markers read simply, Jake Martinez, age 8, and Lucy Martinez, age 6, with the date they had disappeared. As their transport ship lifted off from Haven's Edge, Helen looked down at the endless green forest that had taken her children. She wondered if they were still alive somewhere in that vast wilderness, but she knew she would never see them again. 15 years had passed since the Martinez children vanished into the wilderness of Haven's Edge. The small mining colony had grown into a thriving settlement with over 50,000 residents. New towns dotted the landscape, connected by paved roads and regular transport services. What had once been a remote outpost was now a proper human world. Kate Phillips still served as a colonial administrator, though her hair had turned gray and lines marked her face from years of difficult decisions. She stood at her office window looking out at the bustling streets of New Haven, the colony's main city. Hover cars moved between tall buildings, and the sound of construction echoed from the newest residential district. The quarterly production reports are ready, her assistant, Danny Brooks, said as he entered the office with a tablet full of data. Kate took the tablet and reviewed the numbers. The mining operations had expanded dramatically, with deep shafts reaching far into the planet's core. Precious metals and rare elements flowed off-world to support Earth's growing space program. Haven's Edge had become one of the most profitable colonies in human space, but the expansion hadn't been without problems. As human settlements pushed deeper into the wilderness, strange reports began to filter back from the outer towns. Rangers and survey teams mentioned unusual sightings in the forest, humanoid figures moving between the trees with incredible speed and grace. Marcus Stone, the head of planetary security, had replaced Ryan Burke 5 years earlier when the older man retired. Marcus kept detailed files of these reports, though he wasn't sure what to make of them. Most of the sightings happened at dawn or dusk when visibility was poor. Could be escaped prisoners, suggested his deputy, Lisa Chong, during one of their weekly briefings. Maybe people who went into the wilderness to avoid colonial law. Possible, Marcus replied, but these sightings describe people moving too fast and too quietly, like they're not entirely human anymore. The most puzzling reports came from the teams working near Thornback territories. The massive predators had always been dangerous, but lately their behavior had changed. Instead of the chaotic hunting patterns researchers had documented for years, the Thornback pack seemed more organized and disciplined. Dr. Kevin Walsh, the colony's lead xenobiologist, had spent his career studying the Thornbacks. He noticed the changes immediately when he reviewed the latest field observations. "Look at these attack patterns," he told his research team, pointing at a large map covered with colored pins. For the past 2 years, Thornback attacks on our outer settlements have decreased by 60%, but when they do attack, they're much more coordinated. His assistant, Dr. Amy Foster, studied the data. Could they be learning from previous encounters with humans? Maybe, Kevin said, but this suggests something more. It's like they have better leadership, better communication between packs. The changes weren't limited to attack patterns. Survey drones captured footage of Thornback packs working together in ways never seen before. They shared hunting territories that had previously been fought over violently. Young Thornbacks from different packs played together instead of competing. Most surprising of all, some packs seemed to be protecting smaller creatures instead of hunting them. Sarah Kim ran the communications center that monitored all the outer settlements. Her job was to track routine check-ins from survey teams, mining operations, and research stations scattered across the continent. Over the past year, she had noticed an increase in reports of equipment going missing from remote locations. It's not random theft, she explained to Marcus Stone during a security meeting. Someone is taking specific items, medical supplies, water purification tablets, basic tools. Nothing valuable enough to sell, but everything you'd need to survive in the wilderness. Marcus studied the pattern of thefts. They formed a rough circle around the deep wilderness areas where the Thornback population was highest. Any surveillance footage? That's the weird part, Sarah said. Our cameras catch movement, but it's too fast to get clear images. Whatever is taking this stuff moves like the wind. The most unsettling reports came from the family of Greg Martinez, Carlos's brother, who had moved to Haven's Edge 3 years earlier to work in expanded mining operations. Greg had heard the stories about his missing nephew and niece, and he often wondered if they might still be alive somewhere in the forest. One evening, Greg was driving back from his shift at the northern mining station when he saw 2 figures standing on the road ahead. In the dim light of his vehicle's headlights, they looked human, but something was different about the way they stood and moved. As Greg slowed down, the figures vanished into the forest with impossible speed. He stopped the vehicle and got out to investigate, but found only strange footprints in the soft earth, human-shaped but with claw marks at the tips of the toes. I know it sounds crazy, Greg told his wife Nancy that night, but those footprints reminded me of the pictures Carlos showed me of Jake and Lucy's feet when they were babies. The same wide toe spread, the same arch shape. Nancy thought her husband was letting his imagination run wild, but she couldn't forget the look in his eyes when he told the story. Greg was not a man who made up tales or believed in fantasies. Similar encounters happened across the outer settlements. A medical team's supplies disappeared overnight, but the empty boxes were stacked neatly instead of being scattered. A survey crew reported their broken equipment had been mysteriously repaired while they slept. A group of children in the frontier town of Cedar Falls claimed they saw wild people watching them play from the edge of the forest. The colonial government debated what to do about these reports. Some officials wanted to organize armed expeditions into the deep wilderness to find whoever or whatever was out there. Others argued that as long as there were no direct threats to colonial settlements, it was better to leave the mystery alone. Dr. Patricia Wong, who had stayed on Haven's Edge after treating Helen Martinez 15 years earlier, had her own theory about the sightings. She had studied human adaptation in extreme environments, and she knew that people could change dramatically when forced to survive in harsh conditions. If someone has been living wild for 15 years, she told a group of colonial officials, they would develop enhanced senses, improve reflexes, and physical abilities that might seem impossible to civilized people. They would learn to move silently, to see in low light, to understand animal behavior. But could children survive that long on their own? Asked Kate Phillips. Patricia nodded slowly. Children are more adaptable than adults. Their minds and bodies can change more easily. If they found a way to survive the first few months, they might have become something we wouldn't recognize. As the reports continued to accumulate, one thing became clear. Whoever was living in the deep wilderness was not hostile. They took what they needed but never harmed anyone. They seemed to avoid direct contact with colonists while watching from a distance. The Thornback population continued to grow and organize. Mining operations reported fewer attacks, but more sightings of the massive predators observing human activities from safe distances. It was as if the creatures were learning about human technology and behavior. Dr. Kevin Walsh proposed a research expedition to study the changes in Thornback society, but Marcus Stone rejected the idea as too dangerous. The deep wilderness remained off-limits to all but the most essential personnel. In the outer settlements, children began telling stories about the ghost people who lived in the forest and protected travelers from dangerous animals. Parents dismissed these tales as imagination, but the stories spread from town to town with remarkable consistency. Kate Phillips kept the old Martinez memorial markers in her office as a reminder of the colony's early struggles. Sometimes she would hold them and wonder if Carlos and Helen's children had somehow found a way to survive in the wilderness that had claimed so many others. The memorial service 15 years ago had declared them dead, but Kate had never been entirely convinced. The forest was vast and full of mysteries that human science had not yet explained. Perhaps somewhere in that green wilderness, Jake and Lucy Martinez had found a way to make the impossible possible. Alex Chun had been flying survey missions over Haven's Edge for 3 years, mapping the unexplored regions beyond the colonial settlements. His small aircraft was equipped with advanced sensors and cameras that could penetrate the thick forest canopy to create detailed maps of the terrain below. On this particular morning, Alex was investigating a series of unusual formations that appeared on satellite images, geometric patterns in the forest that didn't match any known natural phenomena. The patterns were located deep in Thornback territory, farther from human settlements than any survey team had ever ventured. "Control, this is Survey 7. Alex spoke into his radio as he flew over the dense purple canopy. "I'm approaching the target coordinates now. Weather looks good. Visibility is clear. Copy. Survey 7. Came the voice of Sarah Kim from the communication center. "Remember, you're at the edge of our radio range. If you run into trouble, you'll be on your own until rescue teams can reach you." Alex acknowledged the warning and began his descent for a closer look at the mysterious patterns. Through his cameras, he could see what appeared to be cleared areas arranged in perfect circles, connected by straight lines cut through the forest. The precision was remarkable, far beyond what any natural process could create. As he circled lower for better photographs, Alex noticed movement in one of the clearings. Dark shapes were moving across the open ground with coordinated purpose. His first thought was that they might be thornbacks, but the movement patterns were wrong. These creatures moved in formation, like soldiers following commands. Alex brought his aircraft down to 500 feet for a clearer view. Through his telephoto lens, he could see that the moving shapes were indeed thornbacks, but they were behaving unlike any he had seen in research videos. They moved in perfect synchronization, responding to signals he couldn't identify. Then he saw the figures giving the signals. 2 humanoid shapes stood at the edge of the clearing, clearly directing the thornback movements with hand gestures and body language. Alex adjusted his camera focus and felt his heart stop. The figures were human or had been human once. They stood upright, wore simple clothing made from animal hides, and moved with fluid grace that seemed almost supernatural. "Control, this is Survey 7. Alex said into his radio, his voice shaking with excitement. "You're not going to believe what I'm seeing down here. There are people in the deep wilderness, and they're controlling the thornbacks." Static was his only answer. He had flown too far from the relay stations to maintain communication with the colony. Alex decided to land and investigate further. He found a small clearing about a mile from the geometric patterns and brought his aircraft down in a rough landing that damaged one of his wing struts. As he climbed out of the cockpit, the forest around him seemed to explode with sound, bird calls, insect chirps, and deeper growls from unseen predators. The silence that followed was even more unsettling. Alex grabbed his emergency kit and survival gear, knowing that if his radio couldn't reach the colony, he would be stranded until a rescue team found his aircraft. In this deep wilderness, that could take days or weeks. He had walked less than 100 yards from his crashed aircraft when the attack came. 3 thornbacks emerged from the underbrush with terrifying speed, their massive claws extended and their teeth bared. Alex raised his emergency flare gun, knowing it would be useless against creatures that weighed over 400 pounds each. The lead thornback was less than 10 feet away when it suddenly stopped. A low whistle came from somewhere in the trees, and all 3 predators backed away immediately. They turned and disappeared into the forest as quickly as they had appeared. Alex stood frozen, his flare gun still raised, trying to understand what had just happened. The whistle had been too complex for any animal he knew, too purposeful to be a natural sound. "Don't move," said a voice from behind him. "Don't move," said a voice from behind him. Alex turned slowly and saw a young woman standing 20 feet away. She was tall and lean, with long dark hair braided with small bones and feathers. Her skin was deeply tanned, and her clothes were made from carefully crafted animal hides. Most striking were her eyes, alert and intelligent, but with a wildness that reminded Alex of the predators he had just faced. "Who are you?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Lucy Martinez," she replied, stepping closer with movements that were perfectly silent. "And you're trespassing in our territory." The name hit Alex like a physical blow. Every colonist knew the story of the Martinez children who had vanished 15 years ago. Lucy Martinez would be 21 now, exactly the age of the young woman standing before him. "You're supposed to be dead," Alex said. Lucy smiled, revealing teeth that were whiter and sharper than normal human teeth. "Death is a luxury we couldn't afford." A second figure emerged from the forest, a young man who shared Lucy's distinctive features and wild appearance. He was taller and more muscular, with scars across his arms and chest that spoke of countless battles with claws and fangs. "Jake Martinez." The man introduced himself. "We saw your aircraft crash. Are you injured?" Alex shook his head, still trying to process what he was seeing. "How is this possible? How did you survive?" "The same way everything else in this forest survives," Jake replied. "By adapting, learning, and becoming stronger than the things that want to kill you." Lucy whistled softly, and Alex heard the sound of large creatures moving through the nearby trees. 3 thornbacks emerged into view, but instead of attacking, they sat down like obedient dogs waiting for commands. Alex realized these were the same predators that had nearly killed him moments earlier. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" Lucy said, reaching out to stroke the nearest thornback's massive head. "Most humans see them as monsters, but they're just families trying to survive, like we were." Jake studied Alex with eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. "You're a survey pilot. You've seen the patterns we've made in the forest. Those geometric shapes? You made those." "Training grounds," Jake explained. "We've been teaching the packs to work together to prepare for what's coming." "What's coming?" Alex asked. Lucy and Jake exchanged glances, and Alex saw something that made his blood run cold. Fear in the eyes of people who had survived 15 years in one of the most dangerous environments known to humanity. "Something that makes thornbacks look like gentle pets," Lucy said. "We've seen the signs for 2 years now. Strange lights in the sky, unusual radiation readings from our salvage equipment, changes in animal migration patterns." Jake nodded. "Every predator species on this planet is gathering in the deep wilderness. They're following instincts older than consciousness, preparing for a threat their ancestors faced before. We need to get you back to the colony," Lucy said. "Your people need to know what's happening, and they need to prepare. But first," Jake added, "you need to understand what we become." Over the next hour, as they walked toward Alex's crashed aircraft, the Martinez siblings demonstrated abilities that defied human limitations. They moved through dense underbrush without making a sound, communicated with various animal species using complex vocalizations, and displayed physical strength that seemed impossible for their size. Lucy showed Alex how she could track individual scents through miles of forest terrain. Jake demonstrated his ability to predict weather changes by reading subtle signs in animal behavior. Both siblings could see clearly in light so dim that Alex could barely make out shapes. "The forest changed us," Jake explained as they reached the damaged aircraft. "Not just our bodies, but our minds. We think differently now, see connections that civilized people miss." "The Thornback matriarch who adopted us taught us that survival isn't about fighting the environment," Lucy added. "It's about becoming part of it, understanding your place in the larger pattern." Alex examined his aircraft and confirmed that it would need major repairs before it could fly again. "How long before a rescue team finds us?" 2 days, maybe 3, Jake said after studying the sky and testing the wind direction. "But we can get you to the colony borders in 1 day if you're willing to travel our way." "Your way?" Lucy smiled. "Through the trees, across the rivers, over the mountains. the way the animals travel when they need to move fast. Alex looked at his survival gear and realized he had no choice. His emergency supplies wouldn't last long enough for a rescue team to find him, and these two survivors offered his only realistic chance of reaching safety. "All right," he said, "but when we get back, you have to talk to the colonial authorities. They need to know you're alive, and they need to understand what you've discovered out here." Jake nodded. "That's why we saved you. It's time for both worlds to meet again." As they prepared to leave the crashed aircraft behind, Alex realized he was about to become the first human in 15 years to witness the true transformation of Jake and Lucy Martinez. They weren't just survivors. They had become something entirely new, bridge between humanity and the wild intelligence of Haven's Edge. He journeyed back to colonial territory took Alex Chun through landscapes he had never imagined existed on Haven's Edge. Jake and Lucy Martinez moved through the wilderness with fluid grace, leading him along paths that seemed invisible until they stepped onto them. They traveled mostly through the forest canopy, swinging from branch to branch like the native creatures Alex had seen in wildlife documentaries. "Stay close and step where we step," Lucy instructed as they navigated across a fallen tree that bridged a deep ravine. The forest talks to those who know how to listen. Alex struggled to keep up with their pace. What would have taken a rescue team days to traverse, the Martinez siblings covered in hours. They seemed to know every stream, every safe passage, every shelter that could provide protection from the sudden storms that swept across the continent. During their first rest stop beside a crystal-clear mountain stream, Alex watched Jake communicate with a pack of smaller predators that approached their campsite. Instead of growling or showing signs of aggression, the creatures chirped and clicked in response to Jake's whistles and hand gestures. "What are you saying to them?" Alex asked. "I'm asking about safe paths ahead," Jake replied. "They've seen aircraft searching this area for the past 2 days. Your rescue teams are already looking for you, but they're searching in the wrong places." Lucy knelt beside the stream and filled water containers made from hollowed gourds. "We learned early that every creature in this forest has information. The small ones see what the large ones miss. The tree dwellers know about weather patterns. The ground hunters understand the safest routes." As they prepared to continue their journey, Alex noticed details about the siblings that became more obvious the longer he spent with them. Their reflexes were impossibly fast. Lucy caught a falling rock without looking, her hand moving before Alex even saw the stone coming loose from the cliff above. Their senses were enhanced beyond normal human limits. Jake could identify specific plants by scent alone, even when they were miles away. Most remarkably, they seemed to communicate with each other without speaking. They would exchange glances and immediately change direction or alter their pace, as if sharing thoughts directly. When Alex asked about this, Lucy explained that living in constant danger had taught them to read each other's microexpressions and body language with perfect accuracy. "When you depend on someone for survival every day for 15 years, she said, you learn to understand them better than they understand themselves." That evening, they made camp in a natural shelter formed by massive tree roots. Jake started a fire using methods Alex had never seen, creating flames without matches or modern tools. As they shared a meal of fruits and vegetables that Lucy gathered from the forest, Alex finally asked the questions that had been building all day. "Tell me what really happened 15 years ago. How did 2 children survive in this wilderness?" Jake and Lucy exchanged one of their silent communications before Jake began the story. "We followed a small animal away from our parents' campsite," he said. "By the time we realized we were lost, we couldn't find our way back. We wandered for 3 days, drinking stream water and eating berries we hoped weren't poisonous." Lucy continued the narrative. "On the 4th day, we were attacked by a young thornback. We thought we were going to die, but an older female thornback appeared and fought off the attacker. She was injured badly, with deep wounds that were becoming infected. We didn't understand why she saved us," Jake said, "but we stayed with her, sharing our water and trying to help clean her wounds. She was too weak to hunt, so we brought her small animals we could catch with our hands. It took weeks, but slowly we learned to communicate with her," Lucy added. "Not with words, but with body language, scent, and sound. She taught us which plants were safe to eat, how to find fresh water, how to build shelters that would protect us from storms and other predators. Jake stoked the fire with a long stick. The most important thing she taught us was that survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about understanding the connections between all living things, finding your place in a web of relationships that keeps the forest alive. We lived with her pack for 5 years, Lucy said. We learned to hunt, to fight, to think like predators. But we also learned compassion, family loyalty, and the importance of protecting those who are weaker than yourself. Alex listened with amazement as they described their transformation. The thornback matriarch had treated them as her own cubs, teaching them skills that no human had ever learned. They developed enhanced physical abilities through constant training and adaptation. Their diet of native plants and animals changed their body chemistry, improving their strength, speed, and sensory perception. When the matriarch died, Jake continued, we had become pack leaders ourselves. Other thornbacks looked to us for guidance because we could think strategically in ways they couldn't. That's when we began to understand our true purpose here, Lucy said. We weren't just survivors anymore. We were bridges between different types of intelligence, human reasoning combined with predator instincts. Over the following years, the siblings had expanded their influence throughout the deep wilderness. They learned to communicate with different species, mediating disputes between competing predator packs, and establishing territories that minimize conflict. They developed a complex system of alliances that brought order to what had been chaotic wilderness. The geometric patterns you saw from your aircraft are gathering places, Jake explained. We've been teaching different packs to work together, preparing them for coordinated action. Preparing for what? Alex asked. Lucy looked up at the stars, which were partially hidden by the forest canopy. 2 years ago, we started finding dead animals with burn marks that didn't match anything in our environment. Small craters in the forest floor. Plants withered by radiation we couldn't identify. We salvaged scanning equipment from crash survey aircraft over the years, Jake added. The readings show energy signatures approaching from deep space. Something is coming to Haven's Edge, something that views this planet as resources to be consumed. Every predator species on the continent is responding to the same instincts, Lucy continued. Their ancestors faced this threat before, long before humans arrived. The knowledge is encoded in their genetic memory, and they're gathering to fight. Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air. Why haven't you contacted the colony before now? They could help prepare defenses. We tried, Jake said. 10 years ago, we approached one of the outer settlements. The security team shot at us on sight. They saw 2 wild humans and assumed we were dangerous criminals or genetic mutations. We realized that our own species would see us as monsters, Lucy added. We look human, but we move differently, think differently, react differently. Civilized people fear what they don't understand. But the approaching threat changes everything, Jake said. The forest intelligence that adopted us has shown us visions of what's coming. Machines that consume biological matter, converting living worlds into fuel for their expansion across the galaxy. The thornback packs alone won't be enough to stop them, Lucy continued. We need human technology, human weapons, human strategic thinking combined with predator tactics and wilderness knowledge. That's why we saved you, Jake said. You're the first human we've encountered who might be able to convince your people that we're not enemies, that we're allies who have learned things your civilization needs to know. As the fire burned lower, Alex studied the faces of Jake and Lucy Martinez. They looked human, but their eyes held depths of experience that no civilized person could match. They had become something unprecedented. Humans who retained their intelligence and compassion while gaining the instincts and abilities of apex predators. When we reach the colony borders tomorrow, Lucy said, we won't enter human settlements. The sight of us would cause panic, maybe violence. But we'll stay close enough for long-range communication. We need you to tell them our story, Jake added. Convince them that the children who vanished 15 years ago have become something that might save them all. Alex nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility they were placing on him. He would return to civilization as a messenger between 2 worlds, the human colony that represented technology and organization, and the wilderness that had created 2 beings who bridged the gap between reasoning intelligence and primal survival instinct. Tomorrow, everything would change for Haven's Edge. The lost children were coming home, but they would arrive as something far more than anyone expected. Alex Chen's return to New Haven caused immediate excitement in the colonial administration. His survival story spread quickly through the settlement, but when he began describing his encounters with Jake and Lucy Martinez, many people thought the isolation and stress had affected his mind. 2 children couldn't survive 15 years in that wilderness, insisted Dr. Frank Miller, the colony's chief psychiatrist. You experience hallucinations brought on by trauma and dehydration. It's a common response to life-threatening situations. But Alex's description contained details that couldn't be explained by imagination. He knew things about the deep forest that no survey pilot had ever observed. His photographs, though blurry, showed clear evidence of the geometric patterns and organized animal behavior he described. Kate Phillips assembled her senior staff to review Alex's account. Marcus Stone, the security chief, remained skeptical, but Dr. Maria Santos, the colony's xenobiologist, was intrigued by the behavioral changes Alex described in the thornback populations. If someone has been living among the predator packs for 15 years, Maria said during the emergency briefing, they could have learned things about this planet's ecosystem that we've never discovered. The coordinated behavior patterns Alex describes match theoretical models for advanced social organization in predator species. Kate made the decision to establish communication with whoever was living in the deep wilderness. A long-range radio setup was installed at the edge of colonial territory, and Alex was asked to attempt contact with the Martinez siblings. For 3 days, there was no response to their broadcasts. Then, on the 4th morning, Lucy's voice came through the static with perfect clarity. Alex Chun, we know you're trying to reach us. We've been monitoring your communications since you returned to the colony. Are you ready to hear what we've discovered about the approaching threat? The conversation that followed changed everything the colonists thought they knew about their world and their place in the galaxy. Speaking through the radio system, Jake and Lucy Martinez revealed information that made the colonial leadership realize they faced dangers beyond their worst fears. The energy signatures we've been tracking are not natural phenomena, Jake explained to the crackling radio connection. They're artificial, created by machines that consume biological matter and convert into fuel for interstellar travel. Lucy's voice joined the transmission. We called them the Kithera, based on sound patterns we detected in their long-range scanning beams. They're machine intelligence that spreads across the galaxy by finding worlds with rich biological diversity and harvesting all living matter. Kate Phillips leaned closer to the radio microphone. This is Administrator Phillips. How do you know this? How can you be certain about the nature of this threat? Because the predator species on this planet have genetic memories of previous encounters, Jake replied. Their ancestors faced the Kithera thousands of years ago. The survival instincts that helped them survive that encounter are encoded in their DNA, and those instincts are activating now. Dr. Maria Santos took control of the conversation. I'm Dr. Santos, xenobiologist. What you're describing contradicts everything we know about animal behavior and genetic memory. Can you provide evidence for these claims? We can show you the artifacts, Lucy said. Deep in the wilderness, there are structures made from materials that don't exist naturally on this planet. Remnants of Kithera harvesting operations from their last visit. The predator packs have been avoiding these areas for generations, but they've been drawing us there in dreams and visions. Over the next several hours, the Martinez siblings shared information that painted a terrifying picture of what was approaching Haven's Edge. The Kithera had been monitoring the planet for decades, waiting for biological diversity to reach optimal levels before beginning their harvest. The increase in human population and agricultural development had accelerated the growth of the planet's ecosystem to the point where it was now ready for consumption. Their advanced scout arrived 2 years ago, Jake explained. Small probe ships that have been mapping population centers and cataloging biological resources. The main fleet will arrive within 6 months. How many ships? Asked Marcus Stone, his security training focused on tactical information. Based on the probe activity and energy signatures, we estimate between 50 and 100 vessels, Lucy replied. Each one capable of sterilizing hundreds of square miles of surface area and converting all biological matter into process fuel. The implications were staggering. Haven's Edge had no military defenses beyond basic security forces designed to handle civil disturbances and wildlife management. Their few armed aircraft and ground vehicles would be useless against an invasion fleet with advanced technology. "What do you propose we do?" Kate asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the threat they faced. The only defense that worked in the past was coordinated resistance, combining human intelligence with predator pack tactics. Jake said, "The Kithra machines are efficient, but they're designed to harvest passive biological resources. They're not prepared for organized resistance from multiple species working together." Lucy continued the explanation. "We've spent the last 5 years preparing the predator populations for this threat. Every major pack has been trained in coordinated assault techniques. They understand human technology and can work alongside your people if the alliance is managed properly." Dr. Maria Santos saw the possibilities immediately. "You're talking about unprecedented interspecies cooperation. Humans and thornbacks fighting side by side against a common enemy." "Not just thornbacks," Jay corrected. "Every predator species on the continent. The tree runners, the mountain hunters, the river stalkers. All of them have ancestral memories of fighting the Kithra. All of them are ready to fight again." The conversation continued deep into the night as the colonial leadership grappled with concepts that challenged every assumption about their world. The Martinez siblings described tactics that seemed impossible: coordinated attacks involving hundreds of different creatures, communication systems that spanned thousands of miles of wilderness, and strategic planning that integrated human technology with animal instincts. "We need proof," Marcus Stone insisted. "If we're going to prepare the colony for this kind of threat, we need evidence that can't be dismissed as imagination or wishful thinking." "Tomorrow at dawn," Lucy said, "look to the eastern mountains. We'll provide a demonstration of what interspecies cooperation can achieve." The next morning, every person in New Haven who owned binoculars or telescopes gathered on rooftops and balconies to watch the eastern horizon. At exactly sunrise, the demonstration began. Hundreds of creatures emerged from the forest in perfect formation. Thornbacks moved in disciplined columns while smaller predators ran alongside them in supporting positions. Flying creatures circled overhead in complex patterns, and even the normally solitary mountain hunters joined the massive display. The procession covered miles of territory, with different species moving in coordinated waves that created geometric patterns visible from the colony. The precision was breathtaking, thousands of individual animals moving as part of a single, organized intelligence. At the climax of the demonstration, the entire assembly stopped simultaneously and turned toward New Haven. For a moment that seemed to last forever, every creature faced a human settlement in perfect silence. Then, as one, they raised their voices in a chorus that echoed across the landscape, a sound that was both beautiful and terrifying, combining the calls of every predator species on the continent. The message was clear. The wilderness of Haven's Edge was no longer a collection of competing animals. It had become a unified force capable of coordinated action on a scale that defied human understanding. As the creatures dispersed back into the forest, Jake's voice came to the radio one final time. "Administrator Phillips, the Kithra will arrive in 5 months and 17 days. We have that long to prepare a defense that combines human technology with predator tactics. The question is whether your people can overcome their fear of the wilderness long enough to accept the alliance that might save us all." Kate Phillips looked around at her staff, seeing the same mixture of fear and awe on every face. They had just witnessed something that would change human understanding of their relationship with the natural world. The children who had vanished into the wilderness 15 years ago had returned with knowledge and allies that might be humanity's only hope for survival. The greatest challenge wouldn't be fighting the Kithra. It would be convincing 50,000 civilized humans to trust their lives to two people who had become something beyond human understanding, and to fight alongside creatures they had always considered dangerous enemies. The weeks following the wilderness demonstration were filled with heated debates in the colonial government. Kate Phillips found herself defending a decision that many considered madness, forming an alliance with creatures that had killed dozens of colonists over the years. "You're asking us to trust our lives to predators," argued Councilman Robert Hayes during one particularly intense meeting. "Those animals have been killing our people since the colony was established. Now you want to arm them and bring them into our settlements. The alternative is extinction, Kate replied firmly. The Martinez siblings have provided detailed information about Kithra capabilities. Our conventional defenses won't slow them down for more than a few hours. Dr. Maria Santos had spent sleepless nights reviewing all available data about the approaching threat. Her analysis supported the Wilderness Alliance, but she understood the fear and skepticism of the other colonists. Look at the patterns, she told the council, projecting holographic displays of the probe ship activity Jake and Lucy had described. The energy signatures are consistent with advanced harvesting technology. If even half of what they've told us is accurate, we're facing a threat that could sterilize this entire planet. Marcus Stone remained the most vocal opponent of the Alliance. His security background made him distrust anything he couldn't control or predict. How do we know these Martinez people aren't leading us into a trap? He asked during one planning session. They've been living wild for 15 years. How do we know they haven't gone completely insane? How do we know they're even human anymore? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Several council members nodded agreement, their faces showing the same doubts that Marcus had voiced. Kate made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. We're going to find out. I'm authorizing a face-to-face meeting with Jake and Lucy Martinez. If we're going to trust them with our lives, we need to see them with our own eyes. The meeting was arranged for the neutral ground of the old Martinez Memorial Site at the edge of the wilderness. Kate Phillips, Dr. Maria Santos, and Alex Chun would represent the colony. Marcus Stone insisted on accompanying them with a full security detail, positioned at a safe distance but ready to respond to any threats. On the appointed morning, the colonial representatives waited beside the memorial markers that Carlos and Helen Martinez had placed 15 years earlier. The forest around them seemed unusually quiet, as if every creature was holding its breath in anticipation. Jake and Lucy Martinez emerged from the tree line at exactly the scheduled time. They moved with fluid grace that seemed almost supernatural, their feet making no sound on the fallen leaves. Kate Phillips had prepared herself for this moment, but seeing them in person was still a shock. They were clearly human in basic structure, but everything else about them had changed. Their skin was darker and tougher than normal, adapted to years of exposure to Haven's Edge's harsh environment. Their hair was long and braided with small bones, feathers, and what looked like carved wooden ornaments. Most striking were their eyes, alert and intelligent, but with a depth that spoke of experiences no civilized person could understand. "Administrator Phillips," Jake said, his voice carrying easily across the clearing despite being barely above a whisper. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Lucy approached the memorial markers and knelt beside them, running her fingers over the names carved in the stone. "Our parents believed we were dead," she said softly. "In many ways, they were right. The children who walked into this forest 15 years ago did die here. But something new was born," Jake added, studying the faces of the colonial representatives. "Something that this world needed to defend itself against the threats that are coming." Kate Phillips found her voice, though it took effort to speak normally while looking at these transformed humans. "We need to understand exactly what you're proposing. How would this alliance work? How can humans and predators coordinate in battle?" Lucy stood and gestured toward the forest. "May we show you?" What followed was a demonstration that challenged every assumption the colonists held about the relationship between human intelligence and animal behavior. Jake whistled softly, and 3 large thornbacks emerged from the trees. Instead of the aggressive postures the colonists expected, the massive predators approached with calm confidence and sat down near their human companions. "These are Sierra, Canyon, and River," Lucy said, introducing the thornbacks as if they were old friends. "They're pack leaders who have been training with us for 3 years." Dr. Maria Santos watched in fascination as Jake communicated with the creatures using a combination of whistles, clicks, and hand gestures. The thornbacks responded with their own vocalizations and body language, creating what was clearly a two-way conversation. "They understand tactical concepts," Jake explained. "Territory control, flanking maneuvers, coordinated timing. They can process information about enemy movements and adapt their strategies accordingly." Lucy demonstrated by describing a hypothetical battle scenario using sounds and gestures. The 3 thornbacks immediately moved into formation, positioning themselves to cover different approaches to the clearing. Their movements were precise and purposeful, showing intelligence that went far beyond instinct. "This is impossible," Marcus Stone said through his radio communicator from his position with the security team. "Animals don't have the cognitive capacity for strategic thinking." "That's where you're wrong," Jake replied, apparently able to hear the radio transmission. "Human intelligence isn't the only type of intelligence in the galaxy. Predator intelligence is different, but it's equally complex. They understand patterns, relationships, and cause and effect in ways that complement human reasoning." Over the next several hours, the Martinez siblings demonstrated capabilities that seemed to blur the line between human and animal consciousness. They could communicate with dozens of different species, coordinate complex activities across vast territories, and process environmental information with accuracy that surpassed any technological sensors. "The key insight," Lucy explained, "is that different types of intelligence can work together if you find the right communication methods. Human strategic thinking combined with predator tactical instincts creates possibilities that neither could achieve alone." Dr. Maria Santos began to understand the implications. "You're describing a form of collective intelligence, multiple species contributing their unique capabilities to solve problems too complex for any single type of mind." "Exactly," Jake said. "The Kithra are machine intelligences that excel at processing information and coordinating mechanical systems. But they have weaknesses. They assume biological creatures will behave predictably, following simple survival patterns. They're not prepared for adaptive cooperation between different species." Kate Phillips saw the potential, but she also understood the massive challenges involved. How do we integrate this with our existing defenses? How do we coordinate human technology with animal tactics? "That's why we need people like Dr. Santos and engineer Tony Rodriguez," Lucy said. "Humans who can adapt technology to work with biological systems instead of replacing them." The conversation continued as the day progressed, moving from theoretical concepts to practical planning. The Martinez siblings described modifications that could be made to human weapons and vehicles to make them compatible with predator tactics. They outlined communication systems that could coordinate activities between human settlements and wilderness territories. Most importantly, they explained how the psychological barriers between species could be overcome through careful introduction and training programs. "The biggest challenge isn't technical," Jake observed. "It's convincing your people that predators can be allies instead of enemies. Fear is the greatest obstacle to this alliance." Marcus Stone finally left his position with the security team and approached the group directly. Up close, his reaction to Jake and Lucy was even more intense. They looked human enough to trigger recognition, but their movements and mannerisms were unsettling in ways he couldn't define. "Even if this alliance is possible," he said, "how do we know we can trust you? You've been changed by this environment in ways we don't understand. How do we know your loyalties are still with humanity?" Lucy and Jake exchanged one of their silent communications. Then Lucy spoke with quiet intensity. "Because humanity is part of the ecosystem we've sworn to protect. We've learned that survival isn't about one species dominating others. It's about finding balance, creating relationships that make all participants stronger. Besides," Jake added with a slight smile, "the Kithra don't distinguish between humans and other biological resources. If they succeed in harvesting this planet, everyone dies, colonists and predators alike." As the sun began to set, Kate Phillips made the decision that would determine the fate of Haven's Edge. "We'll try the alliance," she said. "God help us all. We'll try it. Dr. Santos, I'm putting you in charge of developing communication protocols. Tony Rodriguez will work on technological integration. Marcus, you'll coordinate security for the joint operations." "What about me?" Alex Chen asked. "You'll be our liaison," Jake replied. "The bridge between our world and yours. There's going to be fear and confusion on both sides. We'll need someone both worlds trust to help manage the transition." As the colonial representatives prepared to return to New Haven, Lucy approached the memorial markers one final time. "Tell our Uncle Greg that Jake and Lucy Martinez never died," she said. "They just became something this world needed them to become." The alliance between civilization and wilderness was about to begin, with less than 4 months remaining before the Kithra fleet arrived. The greatest challenge in human history was no longer just about survival. It was about becoming something more than human, while remaining true to what made humanity worth preserving. The Kithra fleet arrived 3 weeks ahead of schedule, emerging from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic insects against the star field. 57 ships of varying sizes arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns around Haven's edge, their dark hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Kate Phillips watched the invasion fleet through the command center's main display screen, her stomach tight with fear and anticipation. 4 months of desperate preparation had transformed the colony from a mining settlement into something unprecedented, a hybrid civilization where humans and predators worked side by side. All defensive positions report ready, announced Tony Rodriguez, the chief engineer who had spent sleepless weeks adapting human technology to work with biological systems. The predator packs are in position, communication networks are active, and weapon modifications are complete. In the deep wilderness, Jake and Lucy Martinez stood on a high ridge overlooking the vast forest that had become their kingdom. Around them, pack leaders from dozens of species waited for the battle commands that would coordinate the greatest interspecies military operation in planetary history. The machines had begun their descent, Jake observed, watching through salvaged electronic binoculars as the first wave of Kithra harvesting vessels broke away from the main fleet. 12 ships heading for the primary population centers, just as we predicted. Lucy raised her hand, and the assembled pack leaders fell silent. Her whistle carried across miles of territory, relayed by creatures positioned throughout the forest, until every predator on the continent knew the battle had begun. The Kithra attack followed the same pattern their species had used for millennia. Harvesting ships descended to the planet's surface and deployed hunter-killer drones designed to eliminate any resistance before beginning the biological conversion process. The machines expected panic, chaos, and uncoordinated defensive efforts from primitive biological creatures. Instead, they encountered something their programming had never anticipated. The first Kithra landing ship touched down in a clearing 5 miles from New Haven and immediately began deploying its complement of hunter-killer drones. The sleek mechanical units spread out in perfect formation, their sensors scanning for life signs to eliminate. The forest around them exploded into coordinated chaos. Thornback packs emerged from concealed positions with modified human weapons strapped to their backs. The weapon mounts Tony Rodriguez had designed allowed the massive predators to carry plasma rifles and missile launchers while maintaining their natural mobility and stealth capabilities. But the real surprise was the tactical coordination. Instead of charging directly at the enemy, the Thornbacks used flanking maneuvers and suppression fire, while smaller predators attacked from unexpected angles. Tree runners dropped from the canopy with explosive devices attached to their claws, targeting the drone's sensor arrays and communication links. Target the sensor clusters first. Jake's voice carried to a biological communication network that linked every creature in the battle. Blind them, then hit the main power systems. Dr. Maria Santos watched the battle from the colony's command center, monitoring the coordination between human and predator forces through electronic displays and biological signal interpreters she had developed during the preparation months. The pack tactics are working, she reported to Kate Phillips. The Kithra drones are designed to fight individual targets, not coordinated group attacks. They can't adapt fast enough to the changing patterns. The success of the first engagement was repeated across multiple landing sites. Every Kithra force that reached the planet's surface found itself facing opponents that defied their tactical programming. Humans provided long-range fire support and strategic coordination, while predators delivered close-quarters assault capabilities that no machine could match. But the Kithra were not defenseless. As their initial wave suffered losses, the machine intelligence controlling the fleet began adapting its tactics. Heavier combat units were deployed, equipped with area effect weapons designed to eliminate large numbers of biological targets simultaneously. The second wave of the attack targeted New Haven directly. A massive harvesting ship positioned itself above the colony and began deploying conversion beams designed to break down biological matter at the molecular level. This was where the Human-Predator Alliance proved its greatest value. While colonial defense systems provided barrier shields to deflect the conversion beams, Predator teams launched coordinated assault runs against the ship's hull. Thornbacks equipped with rocket packs carried explosive charges directly to the vessel's weapon systems, while flying predators provided air cover and targeting information. Lucy Martinez led one of the most daring attacks personally, riding on the back of Canyon, her thornback companion, as they approached the massive harvesting ship. The sight of a human and predator working in perfect coordination to assault an enemy vessel represented everything the Alliance had achieved. Hull breach on the starboard weapon cluster. Tony Rodriguez reported as Lucy's team successfully destroyed one of the conversion beam emitters. The ship is losing power to its primary harvesting systems. The battle raged for 18 hours, with Kithra forces adapting their tactics while the Human-Predator Alliance countered each new strategy. The flexibility of biological intelligence proved superior to mechanical programming, but the machines had superior firepower and seemingly unlimited numbers. The turning point came when Jake Martinez implemented the final phase of their defensive strategy, using the Deep Wilderness Communication Network. He coordinated simultaneous attacks on all Kithra ground positions, while Lucy led air strikes against the orbital fleet. All packs, execute pattern Omega, Jake transmitted to the biological network. Every creature, every weapon, every ally now is a moment that determines whether this world lives or dies. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of predators emerged from hiding places throughout the continent, all moving with coordinated purpose toward Kithra positions. At the same time, human forces launched their most powerful weapons while civilian populations provided support through communication networks and resource management. The sight was beyond anything the Kithra machine intelligence could process. Every species on the planet was working together in perfect coordination, using tactics that combined the best aspects of human strategic thinking and predator combat instincts. Marcus Stone, who had initially opposed the Alliance, found himself fighting alongside a pack of mountain hunters as they assaulted a Kithra command position. The experience changed his understanding of what intelligence and courage could mean. These aren't just animals. He radioed to the command center as he watched a young thornback sacrifice itself to destroy a machine gun nest that threatened human civilians. They're soldiers, allies, friends. They're dying to protect people they've never met. The climactic battle occurred when Lucy Martinez led a combined force of humans and predators in a direct assault on the Kithra command ship. The massive vessel was protected by energy shields and defensive systems that seemed impenetrable, but the Alliance had developed tactics specifically for this moment. While human aircraft provided distraction and fire support, predator teams infiltrated the ship through damaged hull sections. Jake coordinated the internal assault using communication methods that confused the ship's security systems, biological signals that machine intelligence couldn't interpret or counter. The destruction of the command ship sent cascading failures through the entire Kithra fleet. Without centralized coordination, the individual harvesting vessels became vulnerable to focused attacks from the ground. One by one, they were destroyed or disabled by forces that had learned to fight as a single, unified intelligence. As the last Kithra vessel exploded in the upper atmosphere, a cheer went up from every human settlement and every predator pack across the continent. The impossible had been achieved. Biological creatures had defeated an advanced machine civilization through cooperation, adaptation, and courage. Jake and Lucy Martinez stood together on their ridge, watching the debris from enemy ships streak across the sky like falling stars. Around them, exhausted predators and humans celebrated their victory with sounds that blended human voices and animal calls into a chorus of triumph. "It's over," Lucy said, her voice carrying both relief and sadness for all those who had died in the battle. "No," Jake replied, looking toward the stars where other Kithra fleets might be preparing for their own harvesting missions. "It's just the beginning. We've proven that biological intelligence can defeat machine intelligence when it works together. Now we need to share that knowledge with every world that faces this threat." The pack wars had ended, but the victory belonged to more than just Haven's Edge. It belonged to the concept that different types of intelligence could combine their strengths to overcome any challenge. The Martinez siblings had become more than bridges between human and predator consciousness. They had become symbols of what cooperative intelligence could achieve against any threat the galaxy might present. 6 months after the last Kithra ship fell burning from Haven's edge of sky, the planet had become something unprecedented in human space. The colonial settlements now existed in harmony with predator territories, connected by communication networks that bridged the gap between human technology and biological intelligence. Jake and Lucy Martinez walked through the streets of New Haven, no longer hiding in the wilderness, but serving as official ambassadors between the human and predator communities. Their presence still drew stares from newer colonists, but the people who had lived through the invasion welcomed them as heroes who had saved their world. The integration is proceeding better than we hoped, Dr. Maria Santos reported during the weekly council meeting. Her research into interspecies communication had evolved into a new scientific discipline that combined xenobiology with cognitive science. We now have functional communication protocols with 17 different predator species. Kate Phillips, still serving as colonial administrator, reviewed the reports with amazement. The population of Haven's Edge had tripled in the months following the Kithra defeat, as refugees from other threatened worlds sought sanctuary on the planet that had proven biological intelligence could triumph over machine enemies. The terraforming project are exceeding all projections, reported Tony Rodriguez, whose engineering work had expanded from weapon modifications to habitat design that accommodated both human and predator needs. The predator packs are helping us understand ecosystem management in ways our scientists never imagined. The changes went far beyond simple cooperation. Human children now learned alongside young predators in educational programs that taught both species about their shared world. Thornback cubs played with human toddlers under the watchful eyes of parents from both species. Agricultural projects benefited from predator knowledge of plant cycles and soil management that had been developed over generations of wilderness survival. But the most significant change was philosophical. Humanity had discovered that intelligence came in many forms, and that cooperation between different types of consciousness could achieve things impossible for any single species. Alex Chun, now serving as a chief liaison officer, stood before the interstellar communication array that had been built using both human technology and biological amplification systems developed by the predator packs. Today marked a historic moment. The first official contact between Haven's Edge and the broader human confederation. This is Haven's Edge calling her Central Command. Alex transmitted. We are reporting successful defense against Kithra invasion forces using integrated biological technological tactics. Request immediate conference with Colonial Defense Council. The response came 6 hours later, delayed by the vast distances between star systems. The voice of Admiral Patricia Hayes crackled through the interstellar communicator with barely contained excitement. Haven's Edge, this is Admiral Hayes. Your report has been classified at the highest levels. If you have truly developed effective countermeasures against Kithra forces, every human world needs this information immediately. We have 17 colonies under active Kithra threat. Jake Martinez took control of the transmission, his voice carrying across space to reach the leaders of human civilization. Admiral Hayes, this is Jake Martinez, Tactical Coordinator for Haven's Edge Integrated Defense. We can share our methods, but you need to understand that they require fundamental changes in how humans relate to their environment. The solution isn't just military, it's evolutionary. Over the following weeks, representatives from a dozen human worlds arrived at Haven's Edge to study the alliance between species that had made victory possible. What they found challenged every assumption about humanity's role in the galaxy. Commander Sarah Walsh led the military delegation, arriving with preconceptions about advanced weapons and tactical innovations. Instead, she found herself watching human children and Thornback cubs working together to solve complex engineering problems that had puzzled adult scientists. The cognitive integration goes beyond simple cooperation, she reported to her superiors. These species are developing hybrid thought processes that combine human analytical reasoning with predator pattern recognition. The results are forms of problem solving that neither species could achieve independently. Dr. Rebecca Johnson, the xenobiologist attached to the delegation, spent days studying the communication methods that Jake and Lucy had developed with the various predator species. They're not just translating between different languages, she observed during one of her reports. They're creating new forms of consciousness that bridge the gap between different types of intelligence. The Martinez siblings have become something genuinely new, human minds enhanced by predator instincts. The most difficult concept for the visiting officials to accept was that the transformation was permanent. Jake and Lucy Martinez could never return to purely human consciousness, nor would they want to. They had become evolutionary bridges between humanity and the broader intelligence of their adopted world. The question isn't whether we can replicate the Haven's Edge model on other worlds. Lucy explained to the assembled delegates during a formal presentation. The question is whether humanity is ready to accept that our survival might require us to become something more than we've ever been before. The presentation included demonstrations that defied conventional understanding. Predator packs working with human engineers to construct buildings that integrated natural and artificial systems. Communication networks that span continents using biological signals amplified by technology. Most remarkably, tactical simulations that showed how the integrated consciousness model could be adapted to defend against other threats beyond the Kithra. Admiral Hayes arrived personally to evaluate the Haven's Edge defense model. Her first sight of Jake and Lucy Martinez was unsettling. They looked human, but moved with fluid grace that seemed to ignore normal physical limitations. When they spoke, their voices carried harmonics that suggested communication was occurring on multiple levels simultaneously. You're asking us to recommend that human colonists undergo fundamental biological and psychological changes, she said during their first formal meeting. How do we know this transformation won't destroy what makes us human? Because we're still human, Jake replied simply. We love, we hope, we fear, we dream. We care about justice, beauty, and truth. We protect those who are weaker than ourselves. The only things we've lost are limitations that were holding us back from our full potential. The key insight, Lucy added, is that humanity's greatest strength was never our technology or our weapons. It was our adaptability, our ability to change in response to new challenges while maintaining our essential nature. The demonstrations that followed showed the visiting officials what human potential could become. Jake and Lucy moved through complex obstacle courses that would challenge Olympic athletes, solved mathematical problems that had stumped advanced computers, and coordinated activities across vast distances using communication methods that seemed almost telepathic. But the most impressive demonstration was their interaction with the Predator allies who had helped save Haven's Edge. The relationship between human and Thornback was so seamless that it challenged basic assumptions about the boundaries between species consciousness. They're not controlling the Predators, Dr. Rebecca Johnson observed with wonder. They're not being controlled by them either. They've created something genuinely mutual, a form of cooperative consciousness that enhances both participants. The final decision came when news arrived that the Kithra had launched major offensives against 3 human worlds simultaneously. Conventional defenses were failing, and evacuation was the only option being considered for millions of colonists. Admiral Hayes faced a choice that would determine the future of human expansion into the galaxy. She could recommend a Haven's Edge model and ask human colonists to undergo transformations that would change them forever, or she could accept that humanity might lose worlds to enemies they couldn't defeat with traditional methods. We'll try it, she decided during an emergency conference with Earth Central Command. God help us all, but we'll try it. The Haven's Edge model will be offered as an option to any world facing Kithra threat. Volunteers will undergo the integration process and establish alliances with local predator species. Jake and Lucy Martinez stood together on a ridge where they had first seen the Kithra invasion fleet, watching as transport ships carried their knowledge and experience to threatened worlds across the galaxy. Around them, Predator allies rested in the afternoon sun, their presence a reminder of what cooperation between species could achieve. Are we still human? Lucy asked, a question that had haunted her since their transformation began 15 years earlier. We're what humanity needed to become. Jake replied, looking up at the stars where human colonies were preparing to defend themselves using methods learned from 2 children who had vanished into the wilderness. We're proof that survival doesn't require giving up what you are. It requires becoming more than you thought possible. In the months that followed, 17 human worlds successfully implemented variations of the Haven's Edge model. Each world adapted the concept to their unique environments and indigenous species, but all shared the same fundamental insight. Cooperation between different types of intelligence could overcome any threat. The Martinez siblings had become more than survivors, more than heroes, more than bridges between species. They had become symbols of humanity's unlimited potential for adaptation and growth. The children who had been lost in the wilderness had returned to save not just their world, but the future of human expansion into the galaxy. On Haven's Edge, the memorial markers that had once mourned two lost children were replaced with monuments celebrating the birth of something new, the first world where humanity had learned to become part of a larger intelligence that included all life. The inscription read simply, "Here began the age when humans learned they were never meant to be alone." The apex predators of Haven's Edge were no longer the thornbacks or any single species. The new apex was consciousness itself, cooperative, adaptive, and unlimited in its potential to grow and change in response to any challenge the galaxy might present.